Hey guys, it's Monday, December 16th, 2024, the year of our Lord. 1183 to all of you. And if you're on X, you get that. If not, well, too bad. So there's a lot of talk on financial blogs and influencers talking about the impending housing collapse. And here's why I don't believe it's going to happen. And for the clickbaity title, here's why Robert Kiyosaki is wrong. So let's jump into it. When you purchase a house, it's usually on a 30-year loan. This loan is broken down into 360 months. 30 times 12, math, right? And when you first start making your payments, most of your payment is interest. Very little of it is principal. So if you have a $2,000 mortgage, let's say $1,970 is going toward the interest, and only $30 or so is going against the principal. Just using fake numbers there. Just follow along. So over 30 years, you are paying it off, and you're adding more to the principal and reducing it, and you have this kind of upward curve here. And at year about 14 to 19, you end up flipping that, where you're paying more in principal than you are in interest. The reason I can't give you an exact date is because this changes depending on your interest rate. Anywho, so if you're buying like a $200,000 house, or your loan amount is $200,000, you'll end up spending $400,000 to $450,000 paying for the loan. $200,000 for the principal, and then the rest is your interest. And some people think that's not fair, but I think it's totally fair. And I'm not even a bank or a lender. It's just they're putting up a lot of money up front for you, and you're getting a lot of value for it. And yeah, so I won't be an apologist. I'm just going to say, you sign the contract. If that's the deal you want, go for it. And I actually think it's a very decent deal. Now, Robert Kiyosaki says that because you're paying to live in this house, it is a liability. It is money going out of your pocket. It is not cash flowing in. It is completely a liability. And that's what he shows when he gives you that quadrant of money in, money out, investments in, all that. And so he would say that this is a raw deal. But let's look at this graph over here. So let me explain this graph. This is more a question of the equity in your home value. Here you have your PP. You want a very large PP. That is your purchasing price. And keeping with the example of a $200,000 house, some of y'all are probably in the coastal regions, and you're like, where can I get a house for $200,000? That's a shanty. And to be honest, even here in Texas, it's a bit of a shanty as well. But we're just going to use the round numbers just for fun. Your DP, get your mind out of the gutter. That's your down payment. So you don't ever start off with zero equity. That being said, if you get an FHA loan, I don't know what the down payment is on those right now. It's like 3.5%. This is going to be a lot closer to the x-axis. It's going to be a lot lower. Now, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that your purchase price of $200,000 is going to be, steady. This is just round numbers. When you get into a loan, a 30-year loan, you are fixed into this situation where you owe this amount of money and you have to pay it off over time. And these payments, these principal payments, you are contributing to your equity, how much money you have in the asset. And so a good way to look at this, everything under the purchase price is what the bank is owed. I don't know if y'all can see this red. I'm going to try to make it as red as possible. Hey guys, if y'all want to cash at me some a Christmas gift or something, I don't know. I need dry erase markers with bigger tips. The tip needs to be bigger for me. That's going to be something I'm going to regret later on in life. So you need a bigger tip so that you can see on the graph a little bit better. Or, you know what? Find me a graphic designer who can do my charts for me. I'd love that. So this is your liability over time. Let's say this is year 30. where you finally get all this paid off and you own it free and clear. Hey, I found the dry erase marker that I threw that one, so we're good. So let's say this is year 30. Year 30. Okay. You finally own it outright. If you want to own it outright. I don't. I refinance, but to each his own. So, year 30, you now have zero liability on the property. Is the property worth $200,000? What do you think this line is up here? So, I don't know if it was Warren Buffett, but I've heard it attributed to him, or why he doesn't invest in real estate. He says that real estate isn't really an investment. It's really just paces with inflation. Houses that were built in 1900 haven't really added value, even though their nominal amount has grown with inflation. So your grandmother who bought a house in 1964 for $70,000, that house might be worth $400,000 today. And it's not because the house is better. It's not because the house got upgraded or anything like that. It might have had a new kitchen put in, or not, because some of their old kitchen appliances are fire, and I love it. But chances are, like, the house itself, the improvements on the land, has not really risen to be worth $500,000, yet because they bought it back in the day, inflation has continued to drive up the nominal price. The problem is, if you get a property, you're locked in at this price. And so you're responsible to pay off that loan up to here. But here's the trick. If you're a responsible person and you're paying on your loan, or if you're doing the extra payments to pay this off faster and have less interest, and you make this curve a lot quicker, I'll even show you what that looks like. We'll just start here and do, let's say you pay it off quicker by making extra payments each month. If you do that, you're still playing with the $200,000 line, but is your house worth $200,000? Well, let me give you an example. I had a house, we'll call it $200,000. It was a little bit less, but because of Bidenomics and the incredible inflationary situation we've had over the last 5 years, it went from $200,000 in 2016 to about 315. Let's go. Yeah, we'll just write it here. 315,000 in the span of 8 years. So I don't think that that's all just inflation. A lot of it is, though. And my point of why I don't think the real estate collapse is going to happen is that you have all this added equity. Yeah, let's go ahead and just put it right here. All this added equity, this big black equity right here, that is adding to people's value. And if they've owned the house for longer than I have, they have even more value. And if you have someone who's owned it for, go by scale, if you go by 30 years, that is a lot of value that they have in their home. And all of this that's above their purchase price, their loan costs, everything that's above that, once they get rid of this red, everything about that is wealth that is in their assets. It might be unrealized. So it's unrealized gains because the dollar is weakening. And so really the joke's on the bank. So I started off saying this is a pretty good deal, but I don't want to be a bank apologist or a lender apologist. But here, the longer you hold on to an asset, the more value it's worth over time. And so people who are free and clear, like Granny, who bought their house back in the day for $70,000, all they have is taxes and insurance to deal with, but the value of that house continues to go up. Now, we'll get into it. Taxes should not be taxed on unrealized gains. I'm with you there, but let's just say that the house is worth a lot more. And unfortunately, when the grandparents die, or whenever, the great-grandparents they might be, when they die, you have this house that's worth a whole lot of money because it's been paid off, and it's in today's dollars or in 2024 or wherever. Usually the kids have a pretty decent, I'll say decent inheritance because that's relative to what your situation is. But the house is a good investment. And the most heartbreaking thing, I'm going to go ahead and say it, the most heartbreaking thing is that the survivors of that, death, they end up selling the house because they want to divide it among the siblings. It's a way to get closure. We're never going to deal with Granny's house again, blah, blah, blah. If you have multiple siblings, like, how do I buy them out of their shares? You know, you don't have the liquidity to buy it, so they just chop it up and share it among themselves. And that could be good, but usually not. Ideally, you want to keep as many properties as possible. And that's what I'm doing with my life, is that I'm trying to build an empire of properties, whereas the kids can't sell it. They can only enjoy it after I'm gone. And they're not going to be able to sell it all off. And we're going to build a household that endures forever, or at least multiple generations, until the Lord comes. So here's my advice. I don't believe that Robert Kiyosaki is correct that it's completely a liability, because we're seeing it as an asset that you're paying money into. Yeah, it's taking money out of your pocket each month, but over the long term, it is a good investment. That being said, what if you're dealing with this, but you have a renter? Like, that's what I do. I have investment properties. I buy 20% down. Not a bad amount for investment properties. Actually, it's pretty standard. And my tenants end up paying for all of this and my insurance and taxes. And at some point, it'll get paid off, and its value continues to go up. Now, truth be told, I don't ever pay this off. Why? Because there's no point in pooling all this money into a property and just sitting on it. Your grandparents did that so they didn't have to have another monthly payment. But if Granny needs to say, hey, my house is worth $400,000 in 2024, and she has a medical emergency or something bad, or she wants to see her grandchildren succeed in something, or who knows, whatever your situation is. If they were to tap into the equity that has been built over time, they could do that. So I think that's why the daytime commercials are always talking about, like, oh, have a reverse mortgage, blah, 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 or, home equity loans. That's what they're doing. They're trying to tap into this big amount of equity that's built up in a house that they paid $70,000 for 60 years ago. There's so much equity in that house because of both market appreciation and the devaluation of the dollar. And so that's why I don't think the market is going to collapse, because home values really make everyone who owns title in a home more wealthy. And so I don't think we're going to have a housing collapse. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, supply is really low. Demands are kind of terrible. People aren't looking for homes right now. They're looking to rent. Okay, that's unfortunate. But this is still a much better deal than renting. And I say that as someone who has tenants and lets people rent. They are paying me for the privilege of being first to buy the property. Some leftists would call that evil. I don't. It's very transactional. And you know what? I don't hike up my rents on my tenants each year. I don't do any of that. Heard one guy say that if he's got a tenant that pays regularly, he'll let them stay at that rate until that person decides to leave. Especially if you're caught up in this paradigm right here, the small paradigm, where this amount that you owe is fixed. And if he's paying it off, you should be happy. But if he does leave, he ends up raising the rent to the market levels, and it's even better. But if you find good tenants and you treat them well, there's nothing wrong with keeping them on at the same level. I think there are plenty of greedy people who are like, no, the market rate is here each year. they will increase their rent, or I'll get someone in there who will, who will pay that new amount. And I don't think that's helpful as a landlord, as an owner. There's so much headache going on with the turnover of tenants that you just want to set it and forget it and pray that they don't destroy your stuff. That's why you gotta screen them. Anyways, so this is why I think Robert Kiyosaki is wrong when it comes to, is a house an investment or is it totally a liability? Yes, they're both. But on the flip side, I think because of the inflationary period that we've had, this is actually growing a lot faster. And if you're staying on top of your mortgage payments that are fixed, that's really the truth here, is that if you have a fixed amount that you have to pay the bank and you made the deal, 2 3 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, before all this COVID nonsense, if you have that loan locked in, if dollars are easier to get access to, it is so much cheaper to pay off this loan. It's less of a burden. If your take-home pay was 50% going to this, and as inflation keeps going up and you're able to find raises and standard of living increases through your employer or whatever, or you're making more money because there's more dollars out there, more fractions out there, your number is still going to be 2,000. And if that's 50% of your take-home pay, now it might only be about 40% or 35%. 1/3 of your paycheck is going toward your housing instead of 50. So it's all a question of relativity. And yeah, so Bidenomics is not good because it's hurting people who can't afford it, who don't own assets, which unfortunately is a lot of Americans. But of course, the left plays on, oh, you're all greedy because you own assets and you're getting advantage of this. They point to the stock market. The stock market's increased 20%. If you own stocks, you're doing great, and that's kind of the measure which they gauge the economy is, oh, people are doing great. Look at the stock market. They have nominally the best quarters that they've ever had. But the purchasing power has gone down. And so there's that. So that's all I got for today. I'm going to make another video here in a minute. Thank you so much for listening.